Friends, we've got a real nail-biter on our hands, one that involves enough firepower to turn our planet into a radioactive wasteland. Yeah, you guessed it. We're talking nukes. The Wall Street Journal recently dropped a bombshell report, and frankly, it's got everyone a little twitchy. It seems the threat of nuclear war, a relic of Cold War paranoia we thought we'd buried, is back from the dead and scarier than ever. Remember those duck and cover drills back in school? Turns out they might need a serious update. We're talking about a whole new level of nuclear tension, one that's got world leaders sweating and regular folks digging out their bomb shelter blueprints. Look, I get it. Nuclear war is about as fun to think about as a root canal performed by a honey badger. But here's the thing. Ignoring it won't make it go away. This isn't just some abstract threat. It's a clear and present danger. So buckle up, Buttercup, because we're about to dive headfirst into the terrifying world of nuclear weapons. Okay, so before we go full-blown panic mode, let's rewind a bit. The good news is, we've been down this road before. Remember the Cold War? Tense times with the US and the Soviet Union playing a high-stakes game of nuclear chicken. Then came hope. The fall of the Berlin Wall, the collapse of the Soviet Union. We'd dodged a bullet the size of a ballistic missile. Treaties were signed, weapons dismantled, and it seemed like a nuke-free world was possible. Ah, the sweet, naive optimism of the 1990s. Dismantling a nuclear weapon isn't like tossing out your old toaster. It's complex, expensive, and time-consuming. Not everyone was thrilled about giving up their nukes. Still, progress was made. The Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, signed in 1991, was a major win, limiting nuclear warheads. Fast forward to today, and the nuclear landscape is looking a little less sunshine and rainbows, and a lot more storm clouds gathering. The US and Russia, still the heavy hitters in this deadly game, are sitting on enough nuclear firepower to turn the planet into a giant microwave on high. But wait, there's more. It's not just the old guard we have to worry about anymore. Oh no, the nuclear club has some new members, and they're not exactly known for their chill vibes. We're talking about countries like China, North Korea, India, Pakistan, and let's not forget Israel, who, despite having more nukes than your average dental office, still refuses to officially acknowledge their existence. Now I know what you're thinking. John, this is all very alarming, but how many nukes are we actually talking about? Well, I'm glad you asked. According to the latest estimates, there are over 12,000 nuclear warheads scattered across the globe. That's enough to make a nuclear winter look like a picnic in the park. Let's talk about Russia, shall we? Specifically, let's talk about how their recent actions are making everyone reach for the antacids. Under the leadership of Vladimir Putin, Russia has been flexing its nuclear muscles like a bodybuilder on a protein shake bender. They've updated their nuclear doctrine, lowering the threshold for using these devastating weapons. But here's the real kicker. They've gone ahead and deployed tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus, a move that has NATO sweating bullets, and for good reason. These smaller, more usable nukes are designed for battlefield use, which sounds about as comforting as a hug from a grizzly bear. It's like Russia's playing with matches in a fireworks factory. And let's be honest, their track record for responsible behavior isn't exactly stellar. The Kremlin claims these moves are purely defensive, a response to NATO's expansion and aggression. But let's call a spade, shall we? This is nuclear blackmail, plain and simple. It's a way for Putin to intimidate his opponents and deter them from intervening in his little military adventures. And the worst part is, it just might work. Section 5, NATO's Balancing Act, Deterrence in the Face of Uncertainty. Now let's not forget about NATO, the alliance originally formed to counter the Soviet Union and now tasked with the unenviable job of keeping Russia's nuclear ambitions in check. It's like trying to wrangle a bear with a fly swatter, but hey, someone's got to do it. NATO has responded to Russia's saber-rattling with a mix of caution and resolve. They've beefed up their military presence in Eastern Europe, deploying troops and equipment to reassure their allies and deter any Russian misadventures. But they've also been careful not to escalate the situation, knowing that one wrong move could have catastrophic consequences. It's a delicate balancing act, one that requires nerves of steel and a cool head. NATO can't afford to back down in the face of Russian aggression, but they also can't afford to stumble into a nuclear confrontation. The stakes have never been higher, and the margin for error has never been thinner. Section 6. Broken Promises, the Uncertain Fate of Arms Control. Remember all those lovely arms control treaties we talked about earlier? Yeah, well, about that. Russia has developed a bad case of selective amnesia when it comes to honoring its international commitments. They've been backsliding on arms control for years, developing new and destabilizing weapons systems. Recently, Russia announced it was suspending its participation in the New START treaty. This doesn't mean we're headed for a nuclear showdown just yet. Both sides have indicated they'll continue to abide by the treaty's limits for now. But let's be real, the outlook isn't exactly rosy. The suspension of New START is a major blow to global security. Section 7. The Dragon's Nuclear Roar, China's Growing Arsenal and Global Ambitions. Now, let's shift our attention to the East, where China, the world's rising superpower, is quietly but steadily expanding its nuclear arsenal. For decades, China maintained a relatively small nuclear force, adhering to a doctrine of minimum deterrence. But those days are long gone, my friends. China's rapid economic growth and its increasing assertiveness on the world stage have been accompanied by a significant modernization and expansion of its nuclear capabilities. They're building new missiles, developing hypersonic weapons, and expanding their nuclear testing facilities, all while refusing to engage in meaningful arms control talks with the U.S. China's nuclear buildup has raised alarm bells in Washington and other capitals around the world. It's no secret that China and the U.S. are engaged in a strategic competition for global influence, and the growing nuclear imbalance between them has added a dangerous new dimension to this rivalry. The risk of miscalculation, misunderstanding, or even an accidental escalation is higher than ever, and the consequences of a nuclear conflict between these two giants are almost too terrifying to contemplate. Section 8. Nuclear proliferation, new players, heightened risks. As if dealing with the United States, Russia, and China wasn't enough, we've also got a whole new crop of nuclear hopefuls to worry about. North Korea, led by the enigmatic and utterly unpredictable Kim Jong-un, has been busy testing ballistic missiles like they're going out of style. They've even threatened to use them against the United States and its allies, which, let's be honest, is not exactly the kind of thing you want to hear from a guy who reportedly executed his uncle with an anti-aircraft gun. Then there's Iran, which, despite its insistence that its nuclear program is purely peaceful, has been caught red-handed trying to develop nuclear weapons technology. The international community has slapped sanctions on Iran like it's going out of style, but so far they haven't been enough to deter Tehran from its nuclear ambitions. The proliferation of nuclear weapons to new states is a nightmare scenario, one that could lead to regional arms races, accidental detonations, or even nuclear terrorism. It's a threat that keeps intelligence agencies up at night, and for good reason. Section 9. The cybersecurity threat, a new dimension of nuclear fear. Hold on to your hats, folks, because it gets even scarier. In this age of cyber warfare and digital espionage, we've got a whole new threat to worry about: cyberattacks on nuclear command and control systems. Imagine a world where hackers could infiltrate nuclear launch systems, disable early warning radars, or even launch a missile attack without anyone's knowledge. It sounds like the plot of a bad Hollywood movie, but trust me, this is a very real and very terrifying possibility. The increasing reliance on digital systems for nuclear command and control has created new vulnerabilities that our adversaries are all too eager to exploit. A successful cyber attack on nuclear infrastructure could have catastrophic consequences, potentially triggering a nuclear conflict through miscalculation or escalation. It's a threat that requires urgent attention and international cooperation, but so far the world has been slow to respond. Section 10. The urgent need for dialogue, averting a nuclear catastrophe. So, there you have it, folks, a crash course in the terrifying world of nuclear weapons. It's enough to make you want to crawl under your desk and never come out. But before you succumb to despair, remember this: all hope is not lost. We've been on the brink of nuclear war before, and we've managed to pull back from the abyss. The key is dialogue, diplomacy, and a willingness to engage with our adversaries, even when it's difficult or uncomfortable. We need to revive arms control efforts, strengthen international norms against nuclear proliferation, and work together to address the emerging threats posed by cyber attacks and new technologies. It's a daunting task, but it's one that we can't afford to ignore. The future of our planet, and indeed our very survival, may depend on it. Section 11. Conclusion. Our collective responsibility. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The situation is dire. The nuclear threat is real, it's growing, and it's not going away anytime soon. But that doesn't mean we should just throw up our hands and surrender to our fate. We, the citizens of this planet, have a responsibility to hold our leaders accountable and demand a safer world for ourselves and future generations. We need to make our voices heard, to let them know that we will not stand idly by while they play Russian roulette with our future. Write to your elected officials, support organizations working to reduce the nuclear threat, and most importantly, talk to your friends and family about this issue.